Hey guys, happy Wednesday and welcome back to the stream. I'm home with my puppy, so life is good. She's very annoyed with me because she was taking a nap and I went and woke her up. Do you see yourself on the screen? Is that what you're looking at? Ooh. We are live from my home in Miami, Florida. It is a beautiful Wednesday. I know we did not stream yesterday because, like way too many people across the country, I got stuck in an airport in Wisconsin because of a horrible snowstorm. But we're okay. I did end up going on a trip last minute that I wasn't expecting to necessarily go on. It was like a lot up in the air going into Monday night and Tuesday, but we're back, we're home, and do we have a stream for you today? Life is good. If you guys are just now joining us, make sure to say hello and let us know who you are and where you are watching from in our live chat, because we would love to kick things off by saying hello to you and giving a huge shout out to our amazing headline sponsor of the stream. While you guys are doing that, our amazing friends over at Public Square. You guys know them, you love them, but on the off chance that you don't know Public Square, am I about to change your life? Public Square is America's largest online marketplace of more than 60 to 70,000. I think they're getting closer to the 100,000 mark. Small businesses, all of whom share your values. They are all pro-family, pro-faith, and pro-freedom. Everything from clothes to buy, to coffee to drink, to people to help you plan your vacation, to athletic trainers. Anything you can possibly imagine, you will find it on Public Square. And if you own a small business of any kind whatsoever, you guys have already added your businesses in droves from this community to Public Square and have told me that your business has just exploded. So you need to add yours to Public Square in case you haven't already. You guys can go to publicsquare.com, one word, square, the next word.com, to make sure your business is on there and to go find companies to support that you know will share your values too. We love Public Square. They make everything around here possible, and we are so grateful for them. Okay, let's kick things off on YouTube today to say hi to some people before we jump into the insane Communist Party goals to take over America from the 1960s that, shocker, ended up coming true. Samantha is watching from Portland, Oregon. Good to know there are very sane people still left in Portland, Oregon. We've got Gerald watching in Oklahoma. Peter is here. We've got Brenda watching. Naruto and Jaden and Delane are tuning in on YouTube. Over on Rumble, we've got Old Man Trucker and Junkie Justice kicking things off for us in the chat. Nitty Witty is joining us over on Getter. We've got Alex, Tito, Red4, M-Rock, and more on our locals community, which we love to see. And for all of you guys watching on Instagram, which is our most very widely diverse audience, I would have to say. We've got Casey watching in South Africa. So cool. Jay is watching in Minnesota. We've got Rag watching in Italy. Mo Lovely watching in Iran. So very cool. Consume Life is from Colorado, but in Italy right now. So very cool. Zach's watching in Algeria. We've got Utah, Canada, Florida Panhandle, Puerto Rico, or as Donald Trump would say, Puerto Rico. New York, Brazil, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Kenya. So cool. Thanks, Yobre, for joining us. Train of Whatever Thoughts is watching in Poland. We've got somebody in France, several people in Africa. Guys, how freaking cool. Julian's watching from Bahrain. Javier's watching from Argentina, all over the freaking world. I love it, which is good because today's stream is about so much more than the United States of America. It applies to really the future of Western civilization at large. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the published goals, the 45 goals. It was a list of the Communist Party in the United States of America way back in the early 1960s. I had never heard of this before. I had never read it. It had never come to my attention until a few weeks ago when I drove a few hours north and headed to Palm Beach, Florida for the annual PragerU fundraising gala. If you guys have been following me for a long time, you'll know that my very first job out of college as a content creator was with the amazing team over at PragerU, and I love them so much. They do absolutely amazing work. So went back to their gala, got to see so many incredible familiar faces, and was just floored when in the middle of when they were talking about their impact and what they're doing, especially in the education system right now, they read from this list of 45 published goals from the Communist Party in the United States of America from 60 plus years ago that sadly are starting to come to fruition, or sadly already have come to fruition in the United States. And before we jump into the actual list itself, I think it's just interesting and important for us to back up to the 30,000 foot level and realize that this thing we keep saying over and over and over again, that the left has been strategically planting seeds in every aspect of not just politics, but also culture and civilization at large, knowing they might not see the fruit of that seed come to fruition for decades, is so real. There have been people who have been working overtime for decades upon decades upon decades to strategically change everything about Western civilization at large. Frankly, to engage in a slightly hostile, although more non-hostile, takeover of society throughout every country in Western civilization over the last several decades. And that doesn't just look like taking over positions in government leadership, but more importantly, and perhaps even more interestingly, this covert mechanism by which radical authoritarian leftists have been able to succeed in taking over every single pillar of culture that impacts politics as well. If you look around at the United States of America today, it's completely easy to see that the radical authoritarian left has engaged in this covert takeover of every pillar of the United States and has succeeded in the last several decades. Look at the entertainment industry, look at the education system, look at the mainstream media and journalism, whatever we want to call that. Look at big tech, look at the political system in America, and even the church across our country today, where sadly it's becoming more and more common on Sunday mornings to recite the Sparkle Creed, or to have your pastor tell you that Jesus was non-binary, or why all Christians should be Marxist, which is maybe a little too obvious in what these people are trying to get you to buy into. Heck, the President of the United States of America, though he is now denying it, actually declared this last Sunday, Easter Sunday, as Transgender Day of Visibility, and the White House forbade any sort of religious symbolism in the Easter egg decorating competition over this last weekend. So if you don't think this type of insane ideology has made its way all the way up through the highest ranks of every pillar and institution in America, again, for the sake of reminding you, the education system, the entertainment industry, the mainstream media and journalism, so to speak, politics, the church, everything, it has. And I think for so many people, we woke up after decades and decades and decades in the United States and said, how did this happen? How the hell did this happen? Who could have possibly allowed this to happen? If I had just known, if I had just been aware that these people were trying to accomplish this sort of hostile takeover from society, I would have said something. I would have fought back. I would have done my part. And yet the really crazy thing about it is we did know. We did know. We absolutely knew that this was the end game, the result of those seeds that have been planted for decades and decades and decades that are finally coming to fruition. We just didn't listen when they told us. And that might be one of my most frustrating concerns and complaints about being hyper involved in American politics and just politics around the world at large now. And not even politics, but like bigger cultural issues. These people are trying to tell you what we like to call the quiet part out loud. They're telling you in spades. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to accomplish. Here is how we are going to accomplish it. And yet the vast majority of people in our country are either willfully ignorant about it, completely unaware by choice. They just don't want to get involved because it's not their thing. Or they are aware of it, but think, nobody's really that crazy. Nobody really would go that far. And yet they do, and they will. Look at the last several years, for example. They've told you we are trying to change the gender of your child in the American education system. And nobody believed it when it was reposted by libs of TikTok, but now all of a sudden everybody is believing it now that parents know what's happening inside of their child's classroom. And states are taking custody of your children away from you when you don't agree with what their teacher just told them last week, trying to convince them to change their gender. Nobody wanted to say, oh, well, religion will never be outlawed in the White House. That's crazy. Transgender Day of Visibility would never replace Easter Sunday at the White House. That's crazy. That would just be too far. And yet look what happened just 48 hours ago. We never believed that we wouldn't be having enough children to replace the current population. In fact, everybody for the last several decades, my entire lifetime, has been telling us that the world is on the brink of overpopulation and therefore collapse. And we desperately have to stop having kids. We have to stop having a family. We have to stop even dreaming of wanting kids if we are to save the environment. That wasn't just a talking point from Al Gore. It is said by AOC and current members of Congress that if you don't want the world to literally end in 10 to 12 years, you cannot have children. And yet this week, all of this data is coming out to support the opposite as being true, that actually our world is on the brink of population collapse because we've been so effectively convinced not to have kids that almost every single developed country in the world has such a low birth rate that by a few hundred years from now, we will literally cease to exist. So I'm frustrated when I see the really crazy things being said out there or being done out there, and so many people not just being willfully ignorant about it, but knowing it's going on, listening to it, hearing it, processing it, and saying, well, that would never happen because that's just way too crazy. It would, and frankly, it has. For those that didn't pay attention, 60 plus years ago, the Communist Party was so direct in their published 45 goals to take over America, to fundamentally change America from the inside out, that they actually read this into the Congressional Record on January 10th, 1963, so that everybody could be overtly aware of what the goals were to change Western civilization and cause it to cripple from the inside out. When you hear stuff like this, I want you to apply it to what's being said today with what these people's goal is for the future, because they are being as transparent as humanly possible. When I heard these things read to me for the first time a couple of weeks ago at that gala for PragerU, I was floored. And frankly, I'm sure you guys will be too, as we read the Communist Party's 45 goals for America in The Naked Communist, as read into the Congressional Record on January 10th, 1963. Buckle the freak up. They're addressing the speaker and doing all of the fancy congressional things. We don't have to go into all of that because parliamentary procedure is not everybody's cup of tea. It is my cup of tea. I used to love parliamentary procedure in student government and in high school speech and debate, but nerding out for a different time for sure. These are from The Naked Communist, written way back when in the 1960s, and this was read into the Congressional Record in 1963, so over 60 years ago at this point. At that time, in the 1960s, these were the current communist goals. You ready? Number 1, U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Coexist stickers have been around longer than we thought, I guess. Number 2, U.S. willingness to capitulate, to wave the white flag, to surrender, in preference to engaging in atomic war. Sounds awfully familiar to some modern experiences that we are having. Number 3, develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. In other words, gut the military, gut our armament capabilities, gut our weaponries and our stockpiles so that we're vulnerable to being attacked under the illusion, this is in their own words, I'm not making this up, under the illusion that that would be a demonstration of moral strength. 1963. Number 4, permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Do we need to talk about Ukraine the last several months? Do we need to talk about how all of the weapons that we provided to Ukraine somehow ended up in the hands of Hamas? They're American weapons, by the way. On October 7th, that was a real thing. Proven already, not a conspiracy. Do we need to talk about what happened in Afghanistan when we just left things? Or, I don't know, flew planes to Iran to just give people billions of dollars in cash and weapons? I won't even talk about China. But yeah, okay. Fascinating. Number 5, extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Number 6, provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. In other words, even if you're giving aid, humanitarian aid, in theory, in idea, in intention for people, real people to help their lives, if you're handing it to a communist government receiving party and they never distribute it to the people, that's okay because you're supporting communism around the world. And that's a good thing because we're taking care of people at the end of the day. Number 7, grant recognition of Red China, communist China, admission of communist China to the United Nations. Accomplished. Number 8, set up East and West Germany. That's wild that they were still talking about this as separate states, in spite of the promises in 1955 to settle the German question by free elections under supervision of the UN. Preserve communism, whatever it takes. Number 9, prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Number 10, allow all Soviet satellites individual representation in the United Nations. And now what has happened with communistic or authoritarian or dictatorial governments? Arguably, you could argue Iran is a Soviet satellite of Russia these days. They're running not just the UN at large, but the Human Rights Council at the UN. So that's comforting. Not only do they have representation in the UN, they are running the Human Rights Council. The Taliban government currently governing Afghanistan, which, by the way, is funded by Russia and China, is literally leading the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. So accomplished. Congratulations, Communist Party. Number 11, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. Global government, anyone. The only hope, not just a hope. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. And they provide some structure to that. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one world government with its own independent armed forces. Some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as Moscow. This was 1963. Sometimes these two centers compete with each other as they are now doing in the Congo. Do you believe them when they tell you this stuff? Because we didn't 60 years ago, the Communist Party in America was telling you they wanted to use the UN to create a one world government. It wasn't a secret then. And yet all of a sudden in the last 48 hours, 2 years, 3 years, whatever in America, everyone's like, where did this idea come from? This is horrible. This new idea of one world government. They've been telling you. They've been telling you. Almost 3 times the time I've been alive, they have been telling you. So that's lovely. Number 12, resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. 13, do away with all loyalty oaths, like loyalty to your country. That's fascinating. 14, continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. But now we care about your privacy. Now we care about foreign adversaries because TikTok is this new evil for society. Y'all, this has been going on forever. 15, capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. The Communist Party's goal in 1963 was overtly to capture one or both of the major political parties in the United States of America. I hate to say that, but they accomplished it. Probably both, actually. Nobody wants to talk about that, but they did. They accomplished that. And we like to pretend, oh, well, this is still my party. Oh, well, these people still represent me. And then all of a sudden they act like a uniparty in Washington, D.C. to promote hostile government takeover of entire industries. And we go, where did that come from? How did we get here? You guys, they told you they were going to do this for 60 years. And everyone somehow is blaming Gen Z on all of this. So after goal 15, it gets really interesting because they switch gears a little bit. It's not so overtly pro-Soviet communism. Keep in mind, this is read through the lens of 1963. So this was a different time. They had different global geopolitical situations going on. That's the lens through which they were looking at all of this. But remember how I said, ultimately, leftists have been wildly effective at planting seeds for things that would change culture over time, over decades, that they wouldn't necessarily get to see in their own lifetime, but they knew would change culture. I say probably 20 times a day in different interviews and talking about my book and when I do political events that Andrew Breitbart is famous for saying politics is downstream from culture. If you want to change what's happening politically, if you want to change what they're talking about in the Oval Office or the halls of Congress, you have to change what people are doing in their day-to-day lives, how they're living their day-to-day lives, what their dating lives are like, what food they eat, what they do for worship services on the weekends, what they learn in their classroom, in school, what they watch on TV. If you can change all of that, you can change politics. So while the first part of this list of 45 goals from the Communist Party was a bit more overtly political, take over political parties, promote the formation of a one world government, make sure that Red China, Communist China, can be a part of the United Nations, give Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. After goal 15, capture both political parties in the United States, they switch gears to this changing culture side of things. And I want you to read this so carefully and realize what they've been able to accomplish in 60 years because they had the foresight to do so. Goal 16, use technical decisions of the courts, manipulate the judicial system to weaken basic American institutions by claiming that their activities violate civil rights. In simpler language, manipulate the judicial system in America to legislate from the bench, to cry wolf and say everything violates civil rights. Sound familiar? In order to strategically weaken basic American institutions. Like the church, like the family, like your community, like schools, like universities. Success. Congratulations, Communist Party. 17, get control of the schools. Accomplished. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of the teachers' associations and put the party line in textbooks. Okay, point by point on goal 17, get control of the schools, accomplished. The American education system has quite literally been a factory line, a transmission belt, in their own words, for turning you into a monolithic ideological block where everybody looks different because diversity, civil rights, but everybody thinks exactly the same. We have created a factory for socialism in the United States through the education system. And that's all been really exposed in the last several years, thanks to very courageous individuals willing to tell the truth. And then they tell you point by point how they plan to do that. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and communist propaganda. Accomplished. If you graduate college and you say that you don't believe in socialism, sadly, you are a rarity more often than not. Soften the curriculum. Well, now in Ontario, Canada, you can't say 2 + 2 = 4, or sorry, 2 + 2 = 4, because that is a dog whistle for white supremacy. Can't do that. Sorry. That's a dog whistle for white supremacy. In America now, if you go to the Anti-Defamation League's website, the term 100%, basic mathematical principle, is also a dog whistle for white supremacy. So we can't learn math. In science, you can't say that certain chromosomes associate with your sex, your genetic sex, because Actually, gender is a totally different thing, and you can just choose your gender on any given basis rather than, I don't know, following the science with any of this stuff. We've certainly rewritten history. Look at what happened with the New York Times 1619 project taking over curriculum in history departments in public schools and universities across the country. Planned Parenthood writes most of the sex ed curriculum in the United States in most public schools. So soften the curriculum, check. Get control of the teachers' associations. Have you guys seen what comes out of a teachers' union lately? Good luck trying to be a public school teacher and be involved in your teachers' union if you believe in objective truth, or you're a Christian, or you generally have a more conservative outlook on life. And the last one, put the party line in textbooks. Well, the 1619 Project is now a commonly used textbook in American public schools. McGraw-Hill donates more to the left than almost any other publication and publishing company on the face of the planet. They are absolutely in bed with the Communist Party, and they write most of the textbooks in the school system. So check. Congratulations. You did, in fact, gain control of the schools. Number 18, gain control of all student newspapers. I don't know when the last time you guys visited your college campus was, or if you're on campus, if you read your campus newspaper, there is some crazy communistic garbage in every single one of these newspapers. Number 19, use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. Wow, that sounds familiar. Instant flashback to paid protesters trying to smack Kristen Hawkins and I over the head with a plastic megaphone, metal and plastic megaphone, just a few months ago, about a year ago right now, at Virginia Commonwealth University, because we wanted to expose the lies of the abortion industry. And a 19-year-old girl was punched in the face by a paid protester who was not a student on her campus, but created a whole student riot from Antifa at our event just about a year ago. All too familiar. 20, infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions in the press. Congratulations, Communist Party. You certainly accomplished that. 21, gain control of key positions in radio and TV, so media, and motion pictures, the entertainment industry. Congratulations, accomplished. 22, continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. What could you mean by that? An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculptures from parks and buildings and instead to substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Just the other day, we were talking about, when I was walking through New York City for my book launch, how strikingly different traditional and modern architecture is in even cities like New York. When you walk through St. Patrick's Cathedral, your soul is inspired to seek the divine. I mean, the type of intricate architecture that exists in the tiniest details in a place like St. Patrick's Cathedral, or even the Chrysler Building, and frankly, even the Empire State Building, which is far more plain than Gothic architecture. And then you look at the modern skyscrapers that are put up in New York, and you're like, this is a glass box. This is a glass rectangle. Look at the modern sculptures that are being put up across parks in the United States of America. They're tearing down traditional statues because racism, because civil rights, even though those are beautiful, beautiful works of art. If you have ever taken the opportunity to travel throughout Europe, I mean, look at the David, look at the Pieta. If you sit on the floor and you look up at the Sistine Chapel, you are inspired for greatness. But individual greatness is not the goal for communism. So instead, we have to degrade, eliminate all forms of artistic expression. You still call it art. You still claim that it's art. But instead, you replace good sculpture from parks and buildings and instead substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Number 23, right in cahoots with that, control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan, they said this point blank in 1963. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, and meaningless art. Explains why when you go to an art museum, there's just a giant canvas with a blob on it, and that is art now, because it's meaningless. If you guys are just joining us, I see some questions coming through our live chat. We are reading through the published list of 45 goals of the American Communist Party in 1963, trying to let people know when these people tell you what they want to accomplish, when they tell you their plans to take over society, they mean it. It's not a conspiracy. It's not too crazy or some wacko person's radical idea. It's real. And imagine if we had listened to this back in 1963. These goals, these 45 goals, were actually read into the Congressional Record on January 10th, 1963. That's what we are reading through today to see what the Communist Party has effectively been able to accomplish in the last 60 years, because everybody told them that's crazy. Nobody's going to actually do that. And they did. Number 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. Hence why you can walk around a pride parade in almost any major American city in June and have naked grown-ass men taking pictures with little children. Or you can have a TV show in the Netherlands, like the clip that we reacted to the other day, of people taking their clothes off in front of children because they're trans, and literally disrobing, undressing in front of children to promote chopping off your body parts. Real thing that we just reacted to the other day. On that same note, goal 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. Need I explain that one? Go to your kid's library at school. You will be shocked to discover how far this has been pushed. Not just to American adults and the general population, but to your kids. It is out there. Number 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. A goal of the radical communist left in 1963 America. Accomplished? I think so. All of this can be found if you guys look up the Naked Communist, or even just a list of 45 goals from the Communist Party America. This list can be found. That's all we're reading from. We're reading from the Congressional Record on January 10th, 1963, where this was read into the official public record for the U.S. Congress. I see a lot of questions coming through on that. There's 45 goals, so we'll keep going on all of them, but holy cow, why does nobody talk about this? Because they told us what they wanted to do. 27, infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. A few years ago, I went pretty viral because I reacted to a post from a big Christian church in Nashville. I think it was called Grace Church in Nashville, where they put together a little swipe through carousel on Instagram saying that the Bible is not the word of God, that the Bible is just a collection of historical texts from different diverse writers, and it's helpful, but it's not a guideline by which to live your life. Infiltrate the church to discredit the Bible? Accomplished in the United States. If you ever want to get a really good kick out of your afternoon, go follow Progressive Christianity on Instagram. I follow that account. I pull a lot of the stuff we react to from that account. It's wild. The Sparkle Creed has nothing on the content of that particular Instagram account. 28, eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. Wow. 29, discredit the American Constitution. Accomplished by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. I feel like I'm reading something that was just said yesterday in the United States Congressional Record by AOC or Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar. To discredit the American institution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, and a hindrance to globalism That was a published goal of the American Communist Party in 1963. This was said on the congressional floor in 1963. There are no new ideas under the sun. Goal 30 of 45, discredit the American founding fathers. Present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. I just gave a speech about this yesterday to an amazing Christian school in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I'm actually going to share the speech with you guys tonight on a separate live stream just for fun, because I think it's fun for you guys to see what we do on campus. But I asked them, describe what the founding fathers were, and they all said old white men in unison. This is what happens every single time. Old white men. We have been programmed to believe this for 60 plus years because it's been a goal of the Communist Party to make you believe that our founding fathers were evil, racist, bigoted, antiquated, geriatric, sagging at the seams, old white men who couldn't possibly know what was good in society, who couldn't possibly build a society that would stand the test of time, that was built on goodness and truth, but instead were, in the Communist Party's words, selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. Hence why, when we think of the founding fathers, we think of the illustrations in our AP US history textbooks, or we think of the latest horribly evil thing somebody assumed that they did. We don't think of them as 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, punk rock young adults who were sticking it to the man, who were willing to speak the truth to power to those far older than them in the British aristocracy, the actual aristocracy, who had manipulated power for far too long to return liberty to the common man. They were the common man, quite literally. But the Communist Party can't have you believe that, because there is no common man. There is no striving for individual greatness as a common man under communism. There is only the party and everybody else. Goal 31, belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Discredit, discourage, erase the teaching of American history because it doesn't matter to the world at large. Never mind the fact the French Revolution would have never happened without the American Revolution. The concept of representative democracy and a democratic republic would never have existed, theoretically, without the United States of America. We can't teach that because that's not the big picture. That's not the history that matters. Goal 32, support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture: education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc. Any socialist movement must be supported. 33, eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. Eliminate the House Committee, number 34, on un-American activities. To my knowledge, I think that has been eliminated. I don't think we have a House Committee on un-American activities anymore. That has been successfully eliminated. Goal accomplished. 35, discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. I think they actually outdid themselves on that goal. They outdid themselves on the idea of dismantling the FBI because they didn't need to dismantle it. Instead, they've changed it from the inside out with a hostile takeover of the FBI to use the FBI as the police state, frankly, for the average American citizen today. They didn't need to get rid of it. Instead, they are able to use it to completely control you and your life. 36, infiltrate and gain control over more unions. I'll move us so that you guys can see the rest of these. It won't let us scroll down further on the page. Here we go. 37, infiltrate and gain control of big business. Simple goal. One very small sentence. Highly effectively accomplished by the Communist Party in the last 60 years. Who is big business in America? Big tech? Apple, Google, Meta? Success? Good luck trying to convince me any of those people are not in bed with the Communist Party. Who else is big business? Department stores, Macy's, Nordstrom, Target, all of whom have bought into this insane Marxist ideology far more frequently and more obviously than any of us would like to admit. Congrats. Takeover of big business. 38, transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to the social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. In other words, if you're a violent criminal, if you have problematic behavior in society, it's not really your fault because everything is a psychiatric disorder. And the police can't help you. The government can't help you. Prison can't help you. Rehabilitation can't help you. Psychiatry has to help you. That's it. 39, dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. Are we not paying attention to how effective this has been? 40, discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Success. That might be the most successful thing the Communist Party has been able to accomplish in the last 60 years. We have effectively discredited the family as an institution. We certainly would say the family is not a one-size-fits-all institution. Every family looks different. Every family, da-da-da-da-da. Family is community, actually. Family is all of us. We don't need the nuclear family. Maybe we should abolish the nuclear family because it's outdated and evil and racist somehow and hates women somehow. And we'll make it way easier for you guys to get divorced because marriage sucks. And you should be promiscuous. You should go out of your way to sleep with as many people as possible. We got 5 more goals on this list. Ubuk is asking us on the Rumble chat, can you put a link where this document is downloadable? Yes, I will make sure to drop this link for you guys in the chat as soon as we're done. But you can just look this up. Congressional Record, January 10th, 1963. It's very easy to find. Or read The Naked Communist. That's where all of this came from. Goal 41. This one stings a little bit. A lot, actually. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and the retarding of children to the suppressive influence of parents. The Communist Party telling you 60 plus years ago, their main goal over the family is not just to discredit the family as an institution, but to emphasize the need to raise children in society away from the family. That parents have no influence over the value shaping of their children or the education of their children. My dad and I were talking about this about a year ago, a little under a year ago. I was giving a speech to a Christian summer camp in Colorado, an amazing organization called Summit Ministries. They do incredible work. I'll be going back there this summer, actually, to speak to their campers again. But on the way down or on the way back up, I can't remember, we were talking about homeschooling because a lot of these kids were saying that they were homeschooled, they loved being homeschooled, and they were asking about why it's becoming more popular in American culture today. And I'll never forget what my dad said to me. He said, you know, when we were younger, when we were raising you kids and we sent you to school and we totally agonized over what was the school that was the right school to send you to, where were you going to get the best education, what was going to give you the best opportunities. Homeschooling was so vilified at that time. It was so abnormal, so weird, because they were able to successfully convince people that they were too stupid to educate their own children. Like, genuinely, if you think about the modern education system in America today, they tell parents, you don't know what you're doing. You're not qualified or accredited enough to be a teacher. You're going to screw your kid up. You're too stupid to be your kid's teacher. And they're talking to highly successful, educated adults in the process, but they have to convince you because, as we know from earlier in the list of 45 goals, they took over the education system, they took over the teachers' unions, and they took over the curriculum. So if they need students to fill that communist takeover education system, they have to convince parents you can have nothing to do with it. You drop your kid off at school, you don't see them for 8 hours. We'll also keep them for sports and everything as well. And then you pick them up and you ask your kid, how was your day? Good. Did you learn anything at school today? Yeah. That's it. That's what parents know about their children's education, because the Communist Party knew 60 years ago, parents are effective in forming the values of their children. Parents have influence over their children and what perspective through which their children will see the world, how they'll vote, who they'll worship, whether they'll get married, how they engage as a productive member of society. And the Communist Party can't have that, because under communism, there is only one boss, one authority, one influence in society that is allowed to thrive. And that's the government, not parents. Oh, my sister's calling me. Should we embarrass her? We're going to embarrass her. Say hi to the live stream. I said I was going to embarrass you. Can I call you back? Love you. Bye. Que tenga buen día. She's studying abroad in Spain right now, so she's on a weird schedule. She probably didn't know I was streaming. That's goal 41. Goal 42. Create the impression that violence and, oh, there's a familiar word, insurrection, actual insurrection, are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political, or social problems. Gee, especially in the era of let's block the freeway to free Palestine, or let's shut down art museums and bridges and tunnels for the environment. Let's, I don't know, burn entire inner cities to the ground for BLM because Marxism, because racism, because it's a legitimate form of oppression. Or at the global scale, let's rape innocent women. Let's bake babies in ovens, because that's a legitimate form of resistance. That sounds all too familiar. 43, overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government, inherently requiring the assistance of the Communist Party because you're not ready for your own government. 44, internationalize the Panama Canal. And finally, 45, repeal the Connolly Reservation so that the United States cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems. Give the World Court jurisdiction over nations and individuals alike. Replace the term World Court today with World Economic Forum, and it feels like I'm reading something that was published 5 minutes ago, not 60 plus years ago. Those are the 45 goals of the American Communist Party from 1963, from over 60 years ago. Do you believe them when they tell you what they want to accomplish? Now that you've seen how effectively they were able to accomplish almost every single thing that they wanted to do, arguably every single item on that list in the last 60 years, do you believe them now when they're trying to tell you that they want to eliminate gender, that they want to create children in petri dishes out of stem cells instead of natural procreation? Do you believe them now when they tell you that they want to force you to eat lab-grown food because it's better for the environment than actual food, chemicals, instead of actual food? Do you believe them when they tell you, well, we're going to shut down entire social media sites that millions, hundreds of millions of Americans use every day, but it's not to censor you. It's not so that we can have more control over the information. It's for your safety. But really, it's to censor you. Do you believe them? I am so shocked, genuinely, by how far we were willing to let this go in the last 60 years, because good people either didn't even know this was happening, or did know and decided to do nothing about it. You have a choice to make today too, because somebody just dropped in our Instagram chat, we live in a communist country in America. You have a choice to make today to believe these people when they're honest about what they're trying to accomplish in the next 60 years and to actively fight against it, or to be like the hundreds of millions of people from the last 60 years who shrugged it off when this was read into the Congressional Record, who said, this is crazy. No one will ever do that. No one will ever go that far. No one would ever be that crazy or obvious. It's up to you to believe those voices for yourself. I'm dropping this link as requested in our live chat right now for you guys to go reference in the future. But again, you can just look up the 45 Communist Party goals from the 1960s. You can look up the Congressional Record from January 10th, 1963. All of this is out there. This is an excerpt from a book called The Naked Communist, and it was the current communist goals list of 45 of the Communist Party in 1963. It begs the question, how do we identify the goals moving forward, and what can we do to fight against them? Be thinking of that. We're going to come back to all of this on the live stream in the next couple of days, but I just had to share that with you guys because it blew my mind when I read that list for the first time myself at an incredible PragerU event. Boy, are they really doing what they can to fight against this in the classroom and beyond. And so are you guys. I'm so, so grateful for your continued support in growing all of our content and all of these channels. Before we go, to make sure other people know that this is in fact a real thing that none of us were taught about on purpose, smash the like button on this stream so that other people have a chance to see it. That could look like a thumbs up or a little heart, depending on where you're watching. And most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button to help us continue to grow one person at a time. If you feel a little extra generous, send this link to somebody who desperately needs to hear this. We don't have a post-stream Q&A today because we are doing People of the Internet live a little bit later, so I'm going to go jump on with my co-host for our other daily live show, People of the Internet, Dave Rubin. You guys can find it on the Rubin Report channels live here in just a few minutes at 4 p.m. Eastern. Love you guys so very much, and we will see you tomorrow for the stream at 3 p.m. And I got a speech coming to you tonight, which is very, very fun. Bye.